Mr. Lavrov, European media published the results of a poll, and it says that the global South sees Russia as a partner and ally, which came as a surprise for the West. When do you think this strict division happened between the countries of the golden billion, so to say, and the rest? And isn't it the reason the Western leaders and diplomats are now traveling to, for example, Blinken went to the Central Asia, and Macron went to Africa, Scholz went to India. They go there to convince this country to join the sanctions, or it is a more global matter? If we speak about history, the ancestor of this golden billion is the colonial powers that were seizing the territories, conquering the territories on various continents, and they were imposing their order, their policies to exploit their natural resources, their human resources, and largely to live at their expense. And now, our Western counterparts, when more than 50 years, well, even more than that, it's been since the decolonization was over, but it's not finalized yet, it's not completed yet, because there is a resolution of the General Assembly regarding that there are still French colonies, British colonies that violate the decisions of the General Assembly, and we also continue to work. In this regard, we will try to make sure that the UN decisions are implemented. Unfortunately, the West did not drop its neo-colonial habits, its neo-colonial aspirations, everything that is being done now to subdue the global economy, to make it work for the interests of the West. It's a neo-colonial instincts, neo-colonial practices. These are sanctions. Many members of the G20, many developing countries were talking about as being harmful for the global economy, for food security, for energy security. And I'm talking about the attempts to manipulate the prices on the global markets. For example, introducing so-called price cap for oil is basically stealing someone else's natural resources, if we see it for what it is. Manipulating the rules of the global trade, including the norms and regulations that are still existing within the World Trade Organization, and many other things as well. Yes, we can see that the West is continuing with other ways under new conditions. They are still promoting their interests without considering the interests of the vast majority of other stakeholders of the global community, and the developing countries can see it for what it is. I have already touched upon this matter, the colossal, boorish moral pressure. Yes, some of them, when such pressure is exerted against them, they are saying certain things, or they're voting in certain manner to relieve themselves a little bit from the pressure from the United States and their allies. But almost no developing country, maybe one or two of them, made certain decisions. Almost none of them joined the sanctions against the Russian Federation, because they are perfectly aware what is going on here, what kind of game the West is playing, and they understand that it's not about Ukraine. But the thing is that our Western counterparts want to prove to them that it's still up to them to make any kind of a decision, and the threats that are now being voiced against the Chinese People's Republic. Sometimes I wonder, are they sane, these people who are posing these threats? You cannot threat to anyone, but when you threat China under current conditions, I really can't wrap my mind around it. If we speak about the manners, well, our Western counterparts have gotten really bad with this, so they are not thinking about diplomacy anymore. They are now only deal in blackmailing and threatening everyone else.
This is Excuse me, and please use the second mic for interpreters.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Lavrov, this is Srinjoy Chaudhary of Times Now Network. My question is, this war has gone on for 1 year. If you're looking at a settlement, if you want peace, would you want India to be involved in the settlement? Do you want Prime Minister Narendra Modi to be involved in the process?
The relations we have with India can be described as the privileged strategic partnership, and they are described as such in the documents that we have signed, and these are not just words. This formula reflects the special character of our relations, starting with India's independence and up until today. That's the nature of our relations, and we appreciate highly the responsible and worthy of a great power stance that India is taking globally on all the key matters of the global agenda. And today, when addressing the participants of the foreign minister meeting, President Modi, I think he presented balanced and responsible position of the country as the president of the G20. And in this address, he was not just speaking about some isolated individual situation, because the West is trying to divide the geopolitical picture into individual episodes, but in the address by Mr. Modi, he gave the assessment of the situation across the globe in general terms, and I completely share it. I think it has already been published, so you can familiarize yourselves with it. As for the assistance in resolving the crisis, on many occasions we have publicly stated that we have never refused to listen to serious suggestions that are made out of the sincere willingness to find a political resolution. One more time, I would like to remind you, when we are called to start negotiations, I do not remember anyone from the Western colleagues or from anyone else from any other countries talk to Ukraine to call them upon them to start negotiations. And I think there is a certain sad truth about this, because Ukraine is encouraged to continue war. When Ukraine was ready to be engaged in negotiations last March, and when Ukraine suggested principles on how the situation could be resolved, that we have supported, and we were ready to sign an agreement based on these principles, Ukraine was slapped on their wrists. Everyone knows this. The United States, the United Kingdom, a number of other actors from the European Union, and from what I understand, they told the Kiev regime, if Russians are ready to sign an agreement on resolving the situation, it means that we need to drag it out, that we need to make them weaker to achieve the victory on the battlefield, to defeat them on the battlefield, to achieve the strategic defeat of Russia. Listen to what the foreign ministers from Germany, or what Josep Borrell said, the top diplomat from the European Union. No negotiations before Ukraine has advantage on the battlefield. So, to call upon Russia to start negotiations, which we have never refused to have if they are in earnest, I think that's not the right thing to do. And since last March, we have not seen anything in earnest. There is only military rhetoric, belligerent decisions made in NATO, and finally, everyone seems to be forgetting, and I mean journalists as well. None of the journalists in the West and in a number of developing countries somehow does not remember. In September, Mr. Zelensky, the head of the Kiev regime, signed a decree, and this decree forbids any kind of negotiations with the Russian government. We've been explaining this several times a day when we answer similar questions, but somehow it remains unnoticed by our colleagues from the media, from the foreign media, and they keep on asking why won't Russia agree to have negotiations. Thank you.
Good evening to all of you.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.